Hello everyone, class is very much in session, and what an eventful Monday Night Raw we had. A huge return. Well, to be honest, two big returns, but one certainly more emotional than the other, but just generally a very eventful night. But was it any good as a wrestling show? There's only one way to find out, and that is by assigning each segment a lovely little grade. I'm Jack from Cultaholic.com, and this is Monday Night Raw Graded. So we start the show to a huge pop with Roman Reigns' music, and out he comes, the big dog. And it was kind of weirdly tense when he first came out because nobody knew what this announcement was. Is he going to have to retire from wrestling? Is he announcing his return? It was a bit of a strange atmosphere, but even despite that, a very emotional one. Everyone was clearly delighted to see Roman Reigns back in a WWE ring. It took him a while to get in the ring, actually. He understandably I don't want to say milked it because he deserved all the applause he got, but he went around the ring, slapping hands, hugging people. He got in the ring and then cut a very heartfelt promo. You could tell this was, if it was scripted at all, it was a very loose script. He kind of just summed up his whole emotions and his experience and all the messages of support he received from everyone. And it was really nice to see him acknowledge that outpouring, and the fans were giving him so much support. I think one person might have tried to boo him at one point and they got quickly shouted down. There was lots of welcome back chants, you deserve it. And it all kind of built, and eventually he gave us the news that we were all hoping desperately for, that he is in remission and he can return to the ring. Absolutely phenomenal news. So yeah, I'm going to probably give this segment like a C- or something because it took him a while to get, no, I'm joking. It obviously gets an A+. I can't give it anything less than that. It's great stuff to see. And hopefully, I don't know if this means he's ready to immediately step back and work a match or anything. He didn't do on this show, but he got involved a bit later on. But regardless of how quickly he can return to the ring, it's awesome to see. Hopefully, he's all right in time for WrestleMania, but you know, I don't want to see him rush back if he's not ready or anything. But he looked pretty good, looked pretty healthy, so fair play. A really wonderful, uplifting start to Monday Night Raw. And of course, I should mention as well that as Roman was leaving, Seth Rollins came out and they hugged, and it was just a wonderful moment. I was wondering if Ambrose would come out and join in the celebration, but he didn't. I think it was probably a wise decision given the fact that for his heel run, he mocked Roman Reigns quite a lot. I think it's probably going to have to take a bit of storyline jimmying just to get it to the stage where we can have a proper Shield reunion, but it was a wonderful moment. Great to see Seth get involved as well. And yeah, on with the show. So next up we had, well, I got a bit confused because we went to a commercial break, and then when we came back, it seemed as though Rollins was coming out for a match, and then we had Aleister Black come out, and I was like, oh, we're getting Aleister Black versus Seth Rollins, Aleister Black versus Tyler Black. This is going to be amazing. And it wasn't that at all. It didn't turn out to be that. It turns out the Revival had made a jobber entrance during the commercial break. The Raw Tag Team Champions had got the jobber entrance, and they were waiting at ringside for their opponents, Aleister Black and his tag team partner, Ricochet. I was pretty hyped for this match. I thought it was going to get a good 10-15 minutes. It was going to be awesome. It got far less time than that. It went about sort of 2 or 3 minutes. And the action was really crisp and really good because all four guys are excellent wrestlers. But at the same time, the Revival did not look like strong wrestling boys. Yeah, the babyfaces pretty much squashed them. Like, the Revival got some offense in, but they dispatched them very quickly. Ricochet dealt with one on the outside with a nice moonsault, sort of step-up moonsault off the ring post, which was awesome. Aleister Black hit the Black Mass on Dawson, I think, in the ring, picked up the pinfall, and it was a nice crowd-popping moment. But that's your tag team champions, boys. And it pains me to say this because I enjoyed like the 2 or 3 minutes that we saw. It was really good action, but I'm gonna have to give it a C- because of the booking. I get that you want to bring in these NXT guys and really get them over and really strong straight away, but I felt the same when DIY just rocked up and beat the Revival. I could understand that a little bit more, but then to have the Revival lose to Ricochet and Black in 2 or 3 minutes, it was a really baffling decision, and that's why I'm going to give it a C-. I don't think it was the right call necessarily. I wouldn't have been too disappointed if there'd been a no contest or a strange kind of finish with a DQ or a count out or something. I think that would have been the right sort of situation so that the new guys weren't beaten, but the Revival were protected a little bit regardless. Next up, who wants to walk with bloody Elias? He got in the ring with his guitar. He was about to do a song which I suspect may have been to insult the Atlanta crowd. That's just a hunch. Who knows? Maybe he would have been nice to them. There's no way. He got interrupted by Lacey Evans, who of course came out for like 2 seconds and then went, "Ah, no, I'm off now." I don't know why they do that. I still don't know what the whole deal with Lacey Evans is. It's got my intrigue, I'll give them that, but not necessarily in a hopeful way. So she leaves. It looks as though, Elias is going to finally get to play his song. But of course, he's interrupted again, this time by Dean Ambrose, who hits the ring and in his sort of casual babyface kind of way, which we all find very charming and endearing, says that he wants to fight and he wants a no DQ match. I assumed he meant against Elias, but then a little bit later on in the show, I may have got that wrong. I got a bit confused with what was going on here, but basically the story is Ambrose wants to fight, Elias wants to sing. That's a natural conflict right there and then. Elias plows on regardless and insults the Atlanta crowd and gets some cheap heat from them, and then Ambrose answers that by hitting him with dirty deeds and just heading to the back. Yeah, a bit of an abrupt end of the segment, and you can kind of tell that this was going to continue later on in the night. I'm going to give it a C grade because, first of all, the Lacey Evans stuff really infuriates me. I just don't understand why they think it's going to work. It didn't work with Emelina, for example, when she was coming out and leaving week on week on week. Hopefully soon, sometime soon, they actually do something with Lacey Evans, please. But it doesn't get a lower grade particularly because both Elias and Dean are good on the mic, so it was fine, the segment sort of rolled along. And also, it's nice to see Elias as a heel and Ambrose as a face. That's the alignment that it should be right now. I remember, back in the day, wanting Ambrose to turn heel desperately, but his heel turn didn't really work, did it? And I don't think it was his fault, I just think they didn't know how to write him as a heel. So, for the moment, nice to see Ambrose as a babyface. I hope he stays that way until he leaves, and nice to see Elias as a heel once again. Next up, a tag team match between Ronda Rousey and her BFF, Bezzy Maid, best friend forever, Natalya, against the Riot Squad, but just 2 members, Sarah Logan and Ruby Riott, with Liv Morgan on the outside. This was progressing along as a sort of standard match, but then midway through, and it did, to be fair, it did take me a little bit by surprise, but not too much given the events of the past few weeks. The match was called off because we had a certain intruder hit the ring. That's right, Papa Shango making his return, like at WrestleMania 8, rumbling down the ring. It was Becky Lynch. So Becky heads down to the ring, this guy tries to stop her, it doesn't really work. They only stationed 1 guy there to stop her. They've improved a little bit. They used to station 0 guys there to stop her from crashing the ring. Now it's just 1, but maybe there'll be 2 next time. She easily dispatches him, gets to the ringside area, smashes Natalya over the back with a crutch. Poor Natalya, she did nothing wrong. Agents are out, like Finley's out, everyone's trying to break it up and stop it. Ronda gets out the ring and tries to brawl with Becky as well. There's various suits are there trying to break it up, and police as well, and they arrest Becky Lynch, like in sort of Attitude Era Steve Austin fashion, and escort her to the back while she's just mouthing off all the way down the ramp, or back up the ramp, I should say. But then something very interesting happens, and something that I didn't quite see, and something that for me really helped give this segment a fresh little twist on the standard Becky crashes and causes anarchy kind of situation we've seen play out recently. This was a little bit different. So Ronda helped Natalya to the back because she's her mate, and then came back to the ring, grabbed the mic and went, "Vince, get out here." She didn't get Vince, she got Stephanie McMahon instead. Ronda tries to get Steph to reinstate Becky Lynch and reinsert her into the match at WrestleMania. So it would be a triple threat between Ronda, Becky and Charlotte, the match that I think we're probably going to see. The crowd want it, they're chanting for a triple threat match. Ronda even uses Stephanie's family to make her point. She goes, "Think of what this match would mean for your young daughters watching at home. Wouldn't it be awesome?" And Steph gets the mic and says, in very McMahon fashion, "No one is bigger than the WWE." And it's totally a shoot. You can see she means it in her eyes, like she's channeling her father so much here. Ronda, to her credit, says, "I'm not your worker, and you've ruined this. You've ruined this whole situation." Leaves her belt in the ring and walks out without the Raw Women's Championship. And I was like, you know what? I can get behind this. This is a new, interesting direction. With that said, I'm not going to go overboard and give this segment a really, really good grade because there were issues with it, and I can't deny that. I'm going to give it a B-. Primarily, it gets penalized because of the Becky stuff. I'm a huge Becky Lynch fan, obviously, and I think that her execution of what she's been told to do over the weeks has been spot on. She's been so intense, so charismatic all the way through, but it's the writing that I sort of disagree with. The issue for me is that Becky, her gimmick now is crashing matches and turning up when she's suspended and crashing the show. but it's not wild and chaotic and anarchic like when Austin did something back in the Attitude Era. When Austin did something, it was wild and unpredictable. It really did feel like he was taking over the show and doing something that nobody had planned for, and everyone's scrambling to try and fix the issue, and he's just running wild. Great stuff. When Becky does it, it feels very staged. And I know that wrestling is staged. I know, I'm not an idiot. But at the same time, it feels very contained. It's very contained chaos. It's the sort of thing where, basically, as I've said, Becky's gimmick is now she crashes shows. Elias comes out and plays the guitar. Becky crashes shows. It's just what she does right now. And I don't think this is the right way to go about things. But the Ronda stuff was good. She was much improved on the mic. Her promo skills are still a bit inconsistent, but generally I think the trend is she's starting to improve over the course of time. Stephanie was great as a heel, as she always is. And yeah, I didn't mind the Ronda thing. I think this is going to help in the long run make Charlotte the ultra mega heel of the match. Ronda's the kind of neutral figure that the fans don't want to win, but she is honourable. She is a babyface, sort of, by definition. So, you know, Becky is the hero of the match that everyone wants to win. Charlotte's the big, mega bad guy. And Ronda's somewhere in the middle, but the most legit fighter out of all three. I think that's a nice dynamic for them to set up. Next up, Jinder Mahal's in the ring and cuts a promo running down Ric Flair. Of course, it's his 70th birthday celebration later on in the night. So Jinder runs him down and says, you know what? I'm going to call out anybody who was invited to Ric Flair's party, because I wasn't. And he's answered by Kurt Angle. It's a clash of former WWE champions. I'm so excited. This is a dream match, and I can't believe they gave it away on free television. The match is kind of exactly how you'd expect it to go in 2019. Kurt Angle comes out full of fire, Jinder puts on a chinlock, and then eventually, after about 2 or 3 minutes, Angle hits him with a series of German suplexes, slaps on the ankle lock, and Jinder Mahal tippity taps out. I'm going to give this segment a B- as well. It was filler in the show, and it wasn't a particularly good match, but at the same time, I thought it served a purpose. Oh, yeah, it made Jinder look really weak, but the Jinder experiment's clearly over, and now he's really settled into his role as a mid-card heel, which is totally fine. I'm glad that he did get to hold the WWE Championship at one time, because he's a really hard worker. By all accounts, everything I've heard, he's a really nice guy, really popular guy backstage. But at the same time, I mean, I'm pleased to see him back in the mid-card, I suppose. It sounds harsh, but Angle comes out, and I like that he won. I feel like he needed to regain some steam, especially if that rumoured retirement match at WrestleMania is true. He needs to get a few wins under his belt, because he's been losing quite an awful lot recently. And also, after the match, when he beat up the Singh brothers for like just to sort of drive the point home, I really liked that. I thought that was a really good move. It made Angle seem intense, and it was kind of reminiscent of the old Kurt Angle. And yes, I thought it really helped stamp his authority and make us realise this is Kurt Angle still. He's building to something at WrestleMania. At least that's what I hope. Next up, we had a moment of bliss. No. This wasn't exactly what anyone wanted to see from Alexa Bliss. Well, some of you might. Some of you dirtier folk out there. But basically, Alexa Bliss is hosting her talk show at the top of the ramp, and her guest is the IC champion, Finn Balor, who is a very attractive man. We all know this, but she flirts with him. They've turned Alexa Bliss into the world's horniest wrestler, apart from maybe Otis Dozovich. It's really not what you want to see from Alexa Bliss. She sits there basically and goes, Finn, you've got great abs. Your IC title's covering up your great abs though. Tell you what, if you show me your abs, I'll show you my... And then Leo Rush's music cut her off, and it was so Attitude Era, with the heel costing us, the fans, the chance to see a bit of female nudity. How dare he? It felt so outdated. Leo Rush, to his credit, kind of gets the segment back on track and reminds us all that there's a wrestling storyline going on, and says, you know what, Balor, you don't deserve to hold that IC title. Bobby Lashley deserves to hold that IC title. Balor tries to then stir the pot a little bit and tries to play off Leo and Lashley against one another, but Lashley's not actually there to speak for himself yet. Leo's like, shut up. And then Balor goes, right, well, let's have a match then. If you want a shot at the belt, let's go for it. Alexa is still the authority figure somehow, because she goes, that match is coming up now. And then the music hits, she goes away, and we get a match. But this pre-segment, this sort of a moment of bliss, this talk show segment, not very good at all. I'm going to give it a D-, primarily because Alexa Bliss shouldn't be just flirting with lads on the roster. When she did it with EC3, it was sort of alright. Now she's doing it with Balor, and I just don't think she should be doing this unless it's to manipulate someone. Alexa Bliss's character is that she'll do anything to manipulate anybody and make sure all the pieces are in place for her to thrive and for her to succeed. This flirting has no end game. She's just doing it because she's attractive, and that's what the writers want her to do. And it does feel like a bit of a crappy throwback to one of the aspects of the Attitude Era that hasn't aged so well. Next up, we do get the match between Balor and Lio Rush. They go for about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit less, and it's fast-paced and hard-hitting, and probably the best match of the night. I enjoyed it. Finn Balor predictably picked up the win with the coup de grace from the top rope, but Lio Rush looked really good as well, really nimble, really agile, while maintaining all of his heelish mannerisms and everything, which isn't easy to do when your moveset is so exciting. I'm going to give it a B+, enjoyed the match, as I say, probably the best match of the night. Next up, we have Bobby Lashley in action against Braun Strowman. Just before that, I should mention as well that there was a confrontation backstage between Heavy Machinery and The Ascension, which is a match that I reckon could realistically challenge Becky versus Charlotte versus Ronda in that headline spot of WrestleMania, but we'll just see how that plays out. Anyway, we get Bobby Lashley and Lio Rush backstage. Lashley shouts at Lio Rush, and they're still sort of implying that there's going to be some sort of breakup. And then, after that, we don't really get a match. Lashley heads to the ring and just jumps Strowman before the bell. Strowman fights off him, fights off Lio Rush, and just heads to the back and poses at the top of the ramp, and he's Braun Strowman again, which I guess, for all intents and purposes, is a good thing. This segment, though, on the whole, it felt really like filler, actually. It felt really lazy. I'm going to give it a D+, because there was no match. It was just Strowman beating up two people, but I was going to give it a lower grade. I've given it a D+, because at least Strowman looks a little bit strong again. We're remembering that he's Braun Strowman, that he's like 9 foot tall and just massive, and that he shouldn't be getting beaten down every week. So it was nice to see Strowman come out on top for once, and God, that sentence, if I'd said that 2 years ago, would have sounded so very stupid. Next up, we get a no DQ match between Dean Ambrose and Drew McIntyre. I thought it was against Elias. This is where I got a bit confused earlier on. It turns out that Ambrose, I guess, just wanted a no DQ match against anyone. Maybe he said that, maybe I missed it, I'm not certain. But he gets his no DQ match, but it's against Drew McIntyre, a far trickier customer, I suppose, than Elias in kayfabe. Probably in real life as well. I'd like to see a real fight between Drew and Elias, wouldn't you? But anyway, my money would be on Drew. But anyway, they have their no DQ match. Ambrose is in his element because it's no DQ. He takes off his belt, starts whipping Drew Mac. He's got some lovely new jeans as Ambrose as well. Lighter shade of blue. Not what I'd personally go for, but I think it works. I think it looks nice on him. However, the match ends when Ambrose sets up Drew on the outside on some ring steps, looking to dirty deeds him onto the ring steps. But Elias comes out from the back, hammers Dean in the back with his guitar. Drew hits the Claymore a little bit later, and that picks up the victory for Drew McIntyre. Then here comes the cavalry, the big slow heel cavalry. Corbin and Lashley head down to the ring as well, and the four of them, those two, Drew and Elias, all are about to murder Dean Ambrose. They're just beating him down. And then the Shield come out to save the day, Rollins and Roman Reigns. And do you know how good it was to see Roman Reigns hitting moves that would usually be booed heavily, but now that, you know, we're all on board with him because of this very real situation he's had to go through, and we're all very, very delighted to have him back. It was great to see him hit moves and get cheered for it. Superman punch, everyone's like, yeah! Spear to Drew, everyone's like, come on! Ooh-ah! Everyone joins in with the ooh-ah! Oh, genuinely exciting stuff, and I enjoyed that they didn't just do a Shield reunion immediately after Roman's return. They sort of looked suspiciously at Dean Ambrose because he was such a dick when Roman was out of action, and they sort of went, and then they headed to the back, and Dean was in the ring like, ooh, this is a bit awkward. I'm going to give it a B-. I didn't really enjoy the match itself that much. It was fine. It was nice to see Dean in a no DQ match because it's what he's good at, but it's more of those big heel boys coming out and doing a beatdown, and we've seen it for what feels like 4 years now. It hasn't been that long, but it feels very, very long. But on the plus side, the Shield coming out and just beating up everybody was a legitimately exciting moment. Next up, we had the final match of the evening, but not the final segment of the evening. We've still got Ric Flair's birthday to talk about, but the last match was Bayley versus Nia Jax in singles action with their respective tag partners at ringside. I don't know what to think of this match really, because I remember once seeing Bayley versus Nia Jax at an NXT takeover. I can't remember which one it was, but they had a really good match, and it was one of the matches that really solidified in my mind that Bayley was such a phenomenal wrestler. Obviously she's had her ups and downs since that NXT run, but this match didn't really compare. And I get that it might have been due to time constraints and stuff, but I feel as though there was more to it. Like, I remember back then, Nia didn't seem to make quite as many mistakes. Maybe it's just because she's been asked to do more on the main roster, who knows. But it was still a fine match, you know. The only issue I really had with it was the finish. Bayley picked up the win with the big elbow drop, which was great to see Bayley pick up a singles victory, but the manner in which it came about left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. I'm going to give it a C+, right? And that sounds a little bit harsh, but I'll explain the finish and what happened and why I didn't like it. So Bayley's in the Tree of Woe. Nia comes over to lay the boots in. She's doing it for too long. The ref's like, come on, you've got to get away. Sasha walks over on the outside to try and stop her, and Nia just grabs her hair. And then Tamina tries to get involved. There's all a bit of a schmoz. Tamina gets thrown into the barricade by Sasha, I think. Bayley takes advantage of all this commotion and all this distraction, and that's what leads to her actually having Nia down on the canvas in a position to hit the elbow drop and pick up the win. Now, for me, that's a little bit unfair on Nia, which isn't the message that they should be putting across. I feel as though the fact that Sasha walked over does sort of count as like almost interference. She's trying to involve herself in the match, and yes, Nia's bending the rules by laying in the boots too long while Bayley's in the ropes, but at the same time, I'm such a wrestling nerd. You get what I'm trying to say, but why am I taking it this seriously? This is my life. Oh God, I could have been a teacher or a doctor. Next up, it's Ric Flair's birthday celebration. Everyone's on the stage, apart from Jinder because he wasn't invited, for Ric Flair's birthday. And obviously, because it's Ric Flair's 70th, the big entrance goes to Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Time to play the game, get in. Triple H comes down, gets in the ring, and then Stephanie and him start to recap the show. We've just seen it. Stop recapping the show, stop it. Luckily, Triple H kind of cuts it a little bit short and goes, right, it's time to bring out the special guests. The special guests are pretty good, to be fair, but there's one that sticks out as a bit of a mystery. So the special guests are HBK, retired Ric Flair at WrestleMania 24, makes total sense. Ricky Steamboat had some awesome matches with Flair back in the late 80s, makes total sense. Kurt Angle doesn't, what? And then Sting, who had an awesome rivalry with Flair in WCW. Kurt, what are you doing there? Are they just bringing out anybody who's like a bit of a legend on the roster and they're bringing them out to like, I don't understand what it was about, but Kurt, he wrestled on the show, he wrestled Jinder, he's still very much active. Kurt comes out, are they just getting anyone out who's a bit older? Oh, Truth, get out here. Former NWA champion Ron Killings. Arn Anderson, oh no. But then, as we're all waiting for Ric Flair to arrive to his own birthday, we cut backstage and oh my God. Yeah! I walk for miles into... His music doesn't play, which is sad, but it's the animal. It's Batista. He comes along, he grabs the cameraman, he's like, come here, film this, bursts into Flair's locker room, drags Flair around by the scruff of his collar. Flair goes very red, I hope he's okay. But then they rush backstage to stop it. Triple H gets back there, there's no sign of Batista, he's taken off, he's gone. He's given a message to Triple H. That's the WrestleMania match, isn't it? Now, I don't know what to think of it. Triple H lays down to comfort Flair. He's like, don't worry, Rick, don't panic. Get a doctor in here. He's like, calm down. And then he's just screaming and shouting. Not going to put the Nature Boy in a very calm mood there, Triple H. Come on now. I'm going to give it a B+. It was an eventful and exciting end to Raw. It was unique the way they did it. At first, I wish they'd done it in the arena so that there was the music and the pop and he could have beaten up Flair. But at the same time, I don't think we can have Flair bumping around too much. He is 70, as we all know now. But Batista did look sinister and pretty cool backstage and definitely, well, that's a weird thing. I've just thought he's the heel of this feud, isn't he? And I don't want to see particularly Batista versus Triple H with Batista as the heel and Triple H as the face. I get they've done that exact feud before with the alignments reversed at WrestleMania 21, but it's more natural for Batista to be the babyface, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, regardless, it was a very exciting end of the show. I enjoyed how it was done backstage, I enjoyed how it was shot, and I liked it generally. And Batista's back. Yeah! So it's time to give the show an overall grade, and to be honest with you, there were some big issues with the show. I didn't enjoy some aspects, the revival getting squashed, the ending of Bayley versus Nia, but you know, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was a bit of a mediocre show, but for the fact that we had 3 big set-piece moments. Obviously, Roman's return was the highlight. Batista's return as well was an awesome way to end the show. It could have, you know, there were faults with it. It could have been a bit better, but it was still good. And another segment that was generally exciting, but did have a few faults, was the whole Becky run-in. But the fact that these 3 things happened in the same show means that you can't really not have enjoyed Raw too much. I don't want to ignore the fact, however, that there were some serious issues with the booking, especially the revival. and generally weak segments throughout. The best match was like 7 or 8 minutes between Balor and Lio Rush, which says quite a lot. So, on balance, I'm going to give it a B-, which does sound a bit harsh considering all the big things that happened, but there were some flaws. But it's a hopeful show as we head down the road to WrestleMania. No, B-, is that too harsh? Oh, I'll give it a B. Roman Reigns is back, everyone. Come on.